Has there been, in fact, a vast increase in the number of narcotics addicts? And if so, what, in your opinion, is responsible?
Well, I would say that the increase in narcotic use has been somewhat extended, and responsibility, I believe, lies in the fact that it has become a social problem. You take in the olden days, as we call them, we had more what you would call mature drug addicts compared to today. Today, you have mostly a younger element. Don't you think so, Al?
Yes, Jerry, I do. In this respect, let me just add this one thing here, Jerry. Years ago, a man, or you'd say an adult, when he became addicted to drugs, would skin pop, what we call skin pop. He would only take the needle, and inject it into a muscle in his arm or his leg. He did this for about maybe from 5 to 10 years. Then he would go into the vein, which we call the main line. Now, that's not so today. Today, a teenager going through the ritual and teaching another teenager how to use, going through the ritual and the use of injections of heroin goes right into the line. They throw out that 5 to 10 year period of putting it into their skin, which makes them heavier users, and they get a bigger and a deeper habit.
Also, excuse me, Jack. Also, I noticed over the years, Jack, that the drug addicts are using the drug more and more diluted with each passing year. For an example, you took an old-time drug addict. He was accustomed to using perhaps 50 or 60% heroin injection, whereas today, you'll take a drug addict, he shoots maybe a 2 to 3% heroin concentration. So the result is that today a drug addict has sort of a less tendency to really be fully addicted. By that I mean, we used to take an old-time drug addict, and overnight we kept him in cells, let's say. Well, during the night he had to have several shots of heroin to keep, not heroin, but we call the city doctor, and they would give him a shot of morphine, whereas today this is not so.
What you're saying today, then, is that the average drug addict is not so deeply hooked on his habit as the old-timer.
I would say yes.
Yeah, we call that a milk sugar habit, Jack. That's what it's known as in the trade. Because to bring out another point, to back up Jerry on that, years ago, when we first started out, we had a reputation that we'd follow you for 24 hours. And we knew within that period of 24 hours, you had to at least have 3 or 4 shots of dope. So you had to go to a source to get it. You had to use it. So therefore, within 24 hours, we have a very good chance of making the case against you. Today, not so. Today, a kid takes one shot, and he's got a habit that's so weak that he can actually go almost 24 hours without getting sick.
It should be easier for him to break that habit then, too, shouldn't it?
Yes.
And I can recall several times where the drug addict that we had arrested, the following day, we brought him to court, and we had several occasions where the judge had to go up into the detention cell to look at him because someone wouldn't believe that he couldn't come before the bench. And in a situation like that, you had to call a doctor right in court and have a shot administered to him.
So what you're saying, then, that while there has been a vast expansion of the number of addicts, the number of addicts is not indicative of those who are deeply hooked on the problem, because some of them are relatively weakly involved with the drug. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
How many addicts would you estimate there are in New York City? Do you have any idea?
Well, I would say that there's somewhere in the vicinity of about 25,000 drug addicts. Don't you agree, Al?
I think that figures. I think you can give a little bigger estimate than that today. I'd say close to 50,000 that we know of.
Well, I don't know about that, but as I said, Jack, these figures are figures compiled by the United States Federal Narcotic Bureau.
So it's somewhere between 25 and 50,000 in your estimate.
Closer to 25, I would say.
What about the people who supply these addicts? Are they any different today than they were 20 years ago?
Well, today the drug pusher today is mainly street level pusher. That is just another drug addict who is trying to make enough money so that he can get more drugs, so that he can kept on his drug kick without having to do any other type of work or any other type of crime. Whereas in the olden days, you had a man who was not a drug addict and who took over a certain neighborhood and would have like regular customers. He would supply the regular customers. But today you'll take a corner. Every drug addict today is a what I would call a possible drug pusher. Wouldn't you say so, Al?
Yes. You see, in a sense, there's not only money involved when you're a drug pusher. There's a sense of power here that's realized. In other words, we've seen a man get in the street, and maybe he's supplying drug addicts from Brooklyn and from Queens, and they're coming into this block, they're getting their supply, and they're leaving. Well, when we take him out of the box and we knock him out, and we put him away, somebody in that block realizes that there's a potential here, and now he takes over. And by taking over, I mean you have so many female addicts that are now under his power, that just knew the other boy or the other man to be the connection. Now he's the new man. He steps out in the street and he says, I'm it. If you want the stuff, you'll have to do this for me, or you'll have to do that. The price is now this. And so for a while, there's a sense of power that he has over these people. Until...
Excuse me, there's also what they call an accommodating drug pusher. He's a fellow that's, let's say he's going to go downtown to buy himself some drugs. So someone will approach him and tell him, well, look, you're going downtown to buy some stuff for yourself. While you're down there, will you get me this and that? Will you get me, let's say, about something for me or my friends? So subsequently, he's only doing this as an accommodation, although he's probably charging him just a little more than he would pay for it.
Taking a little tip for his trouble, is that right?
That's what I would say, yes.
Yeah. What is the price today of keeping a drug habit up in New York City?
Well, that depends upon the tolerance of their own physical makeup. In that, we know people that can get a very good high on for maybe $10 to $20 a day. They're high all the time on that amount of money. And yet, after a tolerance has been built up, it's I say it goes from $50 to $60 for them to maintain this desired high that they seem to be addicted to.
In other words, it's just what their tolerance will bear.
Well, that's a lot of money, especially $50 to $60 a day. How do these people get that kind of money?
Oh, they steal. You see, they steal, and if they're not, well, if they're not strong enough or they're not capable, let's say, of being thieves, well, then they have to become sneaks and people that are not even capable of that, then they have to be capable of watching the street peddler and where he hides his stuff to go in and steal from him. Perhaps where he hid it, they try to take it from them, and they're the real dregs. They're the real miserable people.
You mean they steal from the peddler of the drug?
Oh yes.
A lot of the drug addicts, of course, are working at the large department stores. This is their greatest target and greatest source of income to them. Because here you have, let's say you walk into one big store, and they have an opportunity of stealing whatever they may think is to their best advantage to get the most money for.
In other words, they're shoplifters.
Oh, yes, positively.
Or what about the organized crime angle of drug peddling? You indicate here that a lot of the drug peddling is done by people who are on the habit themselves. But what about the people over them who supply the wholesaler, as it were? Is this an organized operation still?
Yes, it's actually what it amounts to. It's just one big question, one big chain of possession. It's imported. The importer gets it. It's cut. Then it goes to a distributor. Then it comes down until finally it hits the street level. And actually, that's when it's exposed. It's when it hits the street. That's with the present setup today. that's when we can give it, put all our facilities to use, and we effect more arrests because it's out there, and we know it's out there.
Well, in your opinion, is the smuggling of drugs into this country highly organized and centralized by one or two groups, perhaps?
Well, I would say it's groups or people and persons. I wouldn't say whether it's one or two, but I would definitely say that it's organized.
And the people who are organizing it are not, of course, addicts, is that right?
Positively not. They wouldn't have anybody doing that sort of work because they couldn't trust them.
So the wholesaler is not an addict, although some pushers may well be.
I would say yes.
How much money is in this, in your opinion, in terms of the underworld? Any idea?
There's millions involved here, millions of dollars. It's really what we call a big nut. There's really lots of money involved here.
Well, a wholesale operator, have any idea what he might make, for example, in peddling to any given number of peddlers?
Well, yes, we've worked on cases where these people were so big they wouldn't make a draw for less than $300,000. Now, what we mean by we say make a draw is he's not going to go to where it is and draw from where he has it hidden unless the consummation of the deal calls for $300,000. Now, in this particular case that we worked on, it was done with keys. The $300,000 is passed in front. The receiver is told, well, you'll have the stuff within a week. Now, he doesn't know exactly when he's going to get it. So finally somebody will come up to him and say, here's a key to a hotel room, or here's a key to a subway locker. That's where it is.
You mean they had to trust each other for a week over $300,000?
They do, yes. Oh, yes, definitely. This is where the syndicate comes in, the combination comes in. Oh, yes.
In your opinion, is it easier or harder now to combat the narcotics trade?
I would say that it's a lot difficult today than it was back in, let's say, 1947 or 8, for the simple reason that we have lots of laws that are going against the policeman. One example is this Maps versus Ohio. It has to deal with search and seizure, which it makes it very difficult for the police to, let's say, do his job with any reasonable amount of let's say, success. Would you say so?
Yes, definitely.
You're referring to court decisions now which restrict or limit the movement or the activities of the police.
Yes, that's correct.
But other than that, is there any other area where it is perhaps more difficult? And then the sheer numbers, for example, of addicts, you mentioned that earlier. This is a problem.
Yes, it's... Well, actually, your leads years ago used to lead to one particular area, let's say. But now, your leads could lead you anywhere. Transportation is so high, comes into this thing in that today kids have money. You take your young teenagers, if there has to happen to be a little panic, and if the narcotics squad has been successful to the extent that they dried up the sources of supply, or they confiscated the sources that were in the city at the time, these kids are capable of going out to the airport and taking a plane, going to another big city, and getting a source supply and coming back with it.
What would you say is the key tool or weapon in fighting the narcotics trade today?
Well, I would say it's the narcotic detective himself, who is a dedicated man who knows his job and knows what's expected of him and does it.
Yes. It is him. I say that is the only tool you have. We haven't the laws that we had good laws at one time, but these decisions have changed that. And as Jerry just said, it's the man himself. It's this dedication. I mean, you're out there in the field and you feel these things. You see you just see what a terrible thing this drug addiction is, and there's a dedication that goes with your job, and then the first thing you know, you passed up your supper, you're still not home, you go all night, you go 2 or 3 days at a clip. It's the man himself.
All right, on the personal side then, can you give us an idea of how you operated and why you were so successful in tracking down narcotics peddlers?
Yes, Jerry and I started out, this goes back prior to your teenage condition. There was a saying in New York in them days. We say it was a closer family that was using or dealing in narcotics. And there was a saying in the street that if you ever sold junk to a teenager, look over your shoulder because Spinoza and Valente's going to be there. And that was it. And at one time, my partner and I were very successful in drying up sources of supply to teenagers because as good as they were, they knew that we found out that they sold to teenagers, we'd come down there in them days, man, we'd take the place apart. And that's how we actually contained these people or educated them to stay among themselves and keep it away from the teenagers.
And, Jack, we're very dedicated to the job. We never stopped to look at the time. In other words, never said, well, I think there's enough time on this case. Let's wait till tomorrow or let's wait till next week. We always followed it through, and this is one of the reasons.
Well, how did you get your leads, for example, on any individual case? Through stool pigeons, for example?
I'd say that was part of it, but one thing that we have to realize now is this, that nobody likes a drug pusher. Nobody. And we get information from any source. We've had bank presidents give us information. We've taken it from cab drivers. Almost, I'd say, there's dedicated citizens, and believe it or not, where there is a high intensity of drug use in any neighborhood, you'll find that 90% of the people in these particular neighborhoods have such a fear of themselves or their children being involved in narcotics that they'll give us almost any information we need.
Jack, I don't think the word stool pigeon is applicable to the people who divulge information about narcotics for the simple reason that the narcotic problem is such that it can really hit home. So personally, Al and I have felt over the years that anyone who gave information regarding narcotics wasn't actually, as you call, a stool pigeon, but I would say devoted and was trying to do a service to the community.
It was a source of information. That's the way we looked at it.
Well, perhaps I should correct myself on that point. When I referred to stool pigeon, I was referring,
excuse me.
of course,
no, Jack,
to
we've used them.
to people who are already drug pushers or have been
we've used stool pigeons.
arrested as such.
Oh, definitely. I mean, there is such a thing as a professional stool pigeon. Oh, no question about it.
And they are of some assistance.
Oh, yes, definitely.
Definitely.
Definitely. Because, like I say, we take our source of information from anybody. And another reason I'd say is we've been successful is that we've always had the whole city of New York behind us. We've always had the courts, anybody, you name it. The school system, everybody stood behind us 100%. And we've been assisted by any branch, city civil service or what have you. And, it's just been great as far as cooperation goes.
Do any of your cases stand out in your memory because of the danger involved or the difficulty in making arrests?
No, I wouldn't say because of the danger involved, because after all, we were policemen, and I don't think a policeman is worried about danger so much. But in the difficulties, I would say yes, because they have lots of problems making an arrest. You have a situation where it's hard to get into, let's say, an apartment, or people see you and put the word out, or after you make an arrest, people try to take the prisoner away from you. I would say this is the difficulties, but as far as danger, I would say no.
Any individual case, Al, that you recall that would give us an example of the kind of problems you encountered?
Well, yes. You see, we were undercover a lot, Jerry and I, and one particular case that comes back to my mind, you must realize this, we do an tremendous lot of tail work, and that was our reputation. I mean, we came from nowhere, but actually it meant hours of freezing to death there on the rooftops or hiding under garbage cans, and etc. And as a result of our tail work, there would come a time where we'd make our move, and we'd go in for the knockoff. Now, you must realize it's very simple. All you do is just tail drug addicts, and drug addicts are going to take you to their source of supply. Now, a source of supply will be inside a building. Now, you got to visualize what part of the neighborhood this building is in. Now, also in that building, you'll have prostitution until it's knocked out, until it's discovered and knocked out. The same as we had to discover where the drugs were being sold in the building until we knock it out. Now, meanwhile, we'll have to go in and out of this building several times from the rooftop down to the basement to make these observations. Now, there might be a couple of local wrong guys in the neighborhood that figure, well, we're either going up to see the prostitutes or we're drug addicts ourselves. So as a consequence, they're going to try to stick you up. They're going to try to take your money away from you, or if you've already bought the narcotics, they'll take the narcotics away from you for resale. And this actually happened one particular day. You remember that little shootout we had, Jerry?
Yes.
And so there's a danger on being taken for what you might say a John or a drug addict, or you might even come again. You might even say kids that are being trained. We don't know one another because we're undercover. We always feared an undercover federal agent may be working on the same case that don't know us and we don't know him. And we always played with the idea what would happen if we ever met and we didn't recognize one another. So there is an element of danger there.
It never happened, though, did it?
No, it never happened.
Well, you were famous for the disguises you employed as narcotics detectives. Can you give us an idea of the range and variety of these disguises?
Oh, yes, Jack. We've been, first of all, we were the original female impersonators, you might say. And we've been hot dog vendors, chorus girls,
Chorus girls?
what have you. Yes, even chorus girls.
How'd you manage that?
Well, we worked. Excuse me, Joe. We worked the Times Square area very successfully. When we went in there, we were making quite a series of cocaine arrests at the time, and we, as I say, we have citizens that called us up, and this one particular chap had an outfit that supplies uniforms and costumes and all to the stage, to the theater people. And we had access anytime we wanted to go there and take anything out we wanted. We used to take it out by the suitcase full.
We masqueraded as just about anything you can think of.
You were never caught in these disguises? Unmasked, as it were?
No. I remember once I was a cab driver, and I hung around in one particular neighborhood so long to the point where they were practically using me to run their errands for them.
Well, getting back here, I think the one that we were very happy with the results was that hot dog wagon. It was just a simple case. We had put on mustaches and white aprons, and we took over this hot dog wagon from this vendor. We paid him to hire the wagon for the day. And we stood outside this hotel, and actually we had people come in taxi cabs, go into the building, buy their narcotics, they'll buy a hot dog. We heard the conversations, we made them, we know who they were. And when we closed that case, it was a tremendous aid to us, and they never gave us a second thought.
Did you make any money as hot dog vendors?
Yes, we did. And
I also made money as a cab driver with plenty of tips.
Speaking of money, were you ever offered bribes not to make an arrest?
Yes, we've come across plenty of cases like this, Jack. One case stands out where we arrested a man, and naturally he wanted to make a deal right off the bat. So we informed our office that the man wanted to make a deal, and our office in turn got in touch with the district attorney, and all the equipment was sent up for recording the bribe and so on. And in one particular case, I remember where the recording machine wasn't recording too well, and I had it on me, and each time I would question the man about the money and so on, and he would make the offer. It never would come through in the recording machine, so subsequently the man thought I was deaf, and he began to scream at me about the money he was going to give me.
What size money? What kind of money were they offering?
Well, it varies. Usually it's hundreds of thousands of dollars. According to the case and the person you arrested.
Well, one thing I'd like to bring into Dick here, Jack, is that it's when you don't get a bribe offered to you, and it's only when they don't know who you are, you see. I mean, if they know that when you're from the narcotics squad, and nobody will offer you a bribe because they know they know they're locked up for it. They know it's another charge against them, and that's it. There's no question about it. So after you identify yourself, if they know you're from the narcotics squad, there won't even be an offer of a bribe. But if they have an idea that you might be from a different command, then they'll attempt. That's where the bribe will come in. The offer is there, and of course, I'm not saying I'd say they'd be locked up for it anyway. But they don't know, in other words, what I'm trying to say is they don't know that you're Valente and Spinoza. They know it's stupid even to think of offering you, which they have, and when they did, we've locked them up. We've given them the additional charge right on the spot.
Definitely, plenty
And brought
of
them
times.
all to successful conclusions, and
Yes.
indictments and convictions on it, too.
That is true.
Well, were any other kinds of pressure ever applied to you by anyone to prevent you making an arrest?
No, Jack, in this field, as far as pressure being applied not to arrest anyone for narcotic violation, I must say no. Because, as Al has pointed out, everyone more or less is against the drug trade. And if anything, they have helped instead of preventing.
Well, I was thinking, for example, of the drug addict in a rather high position with a lot of money who might even be assisted perhaps in his habit by an accommodating doctor. What do you do with that kind of a person? Is he able to escape arrest?
No, I don't think so. I think in a situation where the law has been broken and it can be, proven in court or enough to effect an arrest, then I would say that an arrest will take place, and there's no one that may interfere with it.
Does the rich addict deal with a different class of peddler than the poor addict?
Yes, definitely. The rich addict, that is a heroin addict, there's no need for him to go out into the street and expose himself, perhaps with waiting for the connection to come along, and there might be 5 or 6 other addicts doing the same thing, and he'll get to know him. No, the rich addict can stand by, and he can stand pat, and he'll have the drugs brought to him by what we call a pretty good connection.
In other words, he'll use what they call a donkey. Someone who'll take the chance to go out in the street and cop for him and bring it to him for either some of the drug or probably for monetary value.
With the expansion of the narcotics problem, there has been, of course, expansion of the narcotics police force. Are there now enough men to handle this problem satisfactorily?
Yes, I would say yes. They have improved the narcotics squad from, I'd say, about 16 men back in 1946 or 7 to where today it's, I would say, is adequate.
How many men are on the
Well,
narcotics
I don't
detail
think
in New
we're
York?
at liberty to say so, but I would say that they have increased it a great deal, and they have sufficient dedicated men.
Well, you've trained a great many of these newcomers in this field. What have you told them in general? How do you approach the job of training a newcomer?
Well, the basic thing we tell them, there's a sense of dedication. And after we've put them through this basic training that we give them, if the dedication isn't there, then he might as well get out. I mean, he might as well go into another phase of detective work, because it's just a question of bringing out the dedication in the man. And if you train him properly and he sees just what a terrible thing this drug addiction is, the dedication will come right out in him, and then forget him, boy, he's on his own. You can't get that man to go home. Believe me, you can't get him to go home.
You've been responsible for jailing a great many narcotics offenders. Do you ever worry that someday one of them may try to take personal revenge on you?
No, Jack, we don't. We don't have to worry about that for the simple reason that all of our cases that we've ever had have been all legitimate, true, honest cases. We never framed anyone, so to speak. So we have no worry about that. Every arrest that we made, the culprit knew that he had committed a crime, and he was arrested fairly and dealt fairly.
Well, just to add to that, Jerry, is Jerry and I have the highest conviction rate of any team, that is, that's made narcotic arrests. And as he brought out, we've always had a good case, a 100% case, before we made our move and made the arrest. And in fact, you'd be surprised. The people that we have, like Christmas time comes around, we always get a half a dozen, up to 25 or 30 Christmas cards, people telling us how happy they were that they were locked up by us, because they know when we made the case we made in the street was the same case that we presented in court. And whether they were going to get 6 months or they were going to get 5 years, they know they deserved it, and they were thankful that they got for what they deserved and no more.
Well, in your nearly 20 years of work in this field, you've seen the narcotics problem grow rather than decrease. Do you see any way out eventually to this whole problem of narcotics addiction?
Yes, I would say that the newest step by that the New York legislature has taken, where the drug addict is confined. I think this is a great step in helping combat the narcotic problem.
You believe then in the mandatory commitment of addicts in order to cure them?
I would say yes.
I'd say yes in this respect that drug addicts beget drug addicts. It takes one to make one. And if there's some sort of isolation, that is, while the man is still in the street, while he's still addicted, he may have a friend. Through curiosity, he gets his friend addicted. But whereas if he's away, he's isolated, and he's given treatment, he can be cured, and while he's being cured, he didn't put anybody else on the stuff.
Also, I believe that the great campaign in enlightening the young people as to the dangers of narcotics, which is taking place in the New York City school system, I think this is a great deterrent to the traffic problem.
Is narcotics addiction in the schools a problem, would you say?
Well, I don't know that there is a problem in the school itself, Jack. I wouldn't go as far as say that. But among the teenagers, I think this program is of great value.
Thank you, Al and Jerry. You've been listening to an interview with Jerry Valente and Alfred Spinoza, who've just retired from the New York City Police Department after 19 years as narcotics detectives. This is Jack Spee, WINS News.